getting paid in fiat currency, or known as, for us here in America, the Federal Reserve note, or the dollar. What does that mean? Or even getting direct deposited, so you don't even see a check. What is that? Well, what you're getting, you really don't own. You don't own that dollar, or even if you get cash for it, those bills, the digits, those aren't really yours. I'll try to explain this. The dollars or digits, you're just borrowing them from the Federal Reserve, which, as I always say, is not part of the government. They're a private company of banks. But you're borrowing them, and you're using them for commerce. So you get paid in them as your employer borrows them to pay you for the work you do, what you provide, and then in return you get these things that they have borrowed. Now you have these things that have been borrowed, which you don't own. You can use them. You're able to for commerce. Trying to explain this, here's a real crude example. If you go to one of your relatives' houses, one of your friends' houses, and they're going to play Monopoly, all right? Simplest I can think of. The money that you're using in Monopoly, those bills, the dollars, whether it's digital or whether they're the paper Monopoly bills, you don't own those. But during the game, during play of that, those are yours, and you are using those to purchase things around the board, in items, hotels, properties, houses, that kind of stuff you're paying. If you land on the tax thing, or you have to pay someone else rent if you land on their spot, you're using them. They're useful to you. They're a useful tool for the game Monopoly. Same thing as what the Federal Reserve note is. It's here. It's created from the Federal Reserve. The stuff's created out of thin air. Basically, I'll get into that a little deeper. But they print the stuff, or they make these digits, and you don't own them. Your employer doesn't. The Federal Reserve owns them. That's why it says Federal Reserve note. It's legal tender for all debts, public and private, so you can use that to purchase things and to go about your life. And what happens with fiat currencies, as I've explained in the past, is they have nothing back in them. Gold's not back in them. Anything of asset or anything of a value doesn't back them. They're just printed, or they're just digits that are made. So nothing is holding the value to them at all, except for the value that you and I give it, because people will accept it for exchange for goods and services that we need or choose to do or use. So with that being said, that is something that we use in commerce, but the Federal Reserve continues to print and continues to create and continues to make these digits, or this money, or these dollars, whatever term you want to give it. And what that causes is the money, the digits, the paper currency, dollars that you and I hold, becomes worth less and less, as less purchasing power. It would be equivalent to saying you're playing Monopoly, and it comes with the set of bills that a Monopoly game has. One of your buddies decides, you know what, let's play Monopoly, but let's do it with 3 times. We have 2 other games. Monopoly, we'll take all that, the dollar bills, all the bills from both of those other games, and bring them. And we'll play with those dollars too. We're not going to have any more hotels. We're not going to have any more houses. We're not going to have any more property. We're not going to have anything else, but we're going to double and triple and maybe quadruple, even tenfold the currency. What is going to happen? Well, there's going to be so much, and there's going to be so much available. People are going to have the ability to have so much that's going to make the value of everything else out there cost more. I mean, the value of the dollars is going to drop as the price of everything else increases. So if you have 10 times the paper Monopoly money, everything's going to pretty much cost 10 times the amount. So if a property costs $100, for a cheaper one are $60. You have 10 times the paper monopoly money there. It's going to cost almost 10 times as much as it originally would. I'm trying to explain this. I know it's a little deeper than that, but this is the most crude example I had for that. So you're getting paid in this, and this is what you're using. And as the bank prints or creates these digits, what happens is the Federal Reserve says, hey, the bank calls up or the government says, hey, we need more stimulus or we need more money or more digits. Print some more. Turn on the printers. Start making more digits. So we're going to call it a stimulus package. So we want 2 trillion, we want 3 trillion, we want 4 trillion or 5 trillion. That's what we need. From there, the bank says we're going to need this much, and these banks say we're going to need this much, and the Fed does it. And how it does it is the Fed says, well, in order to do it, I can't just do it. So I'm going to purchase assets. And in their mind, assets are like treasury bills, that kind of stuff. So the bank will say, all right, we're going to sell you all these treasury bills. We're going to sell you all these things that we consider assets. You give us all this currency, all these dollars, all these digits. And now we have those. And now Fed, you can have all these. So then that's fine. The Fed bought them, with this money they created out of thin air. And everything's fine. And the Fed bought those and they got the highest price. They got those for the highest value they could, the lowest price. Because there's been no inflation, because the stuff has just been created. Well, as that goes, the bank now has that currency, those digits. And the Fed is sitting on these treasury bills, these T-bills. Later on, the Fed will sell those back to the banks or whatever entity is going to hold them. And the Fed will say, well, instead of getting any of that currency back, we would like to purchase this land here, or we'll trade you these assets, these T-bills for this land here, or these companies here. We want an interest in this. We want an interest in that. And so from the stuff that the Fed created out of thin air, all he did was, do some typing on the keyboard, the computer, and make all these extra digits, or to the printer, print in all this extra money that cost them nothing to give to the banks so they could lend that out. In return, the Fed got T-bills, or whatever the asset was they're holding that they had to trade for that stuff they created out of thin air. Then they're like, well, we have these T-bills. What we want to do is give these back. But instead of getting any more of that currency back, or that fiat currency back, or those dollars back, or digits, we in return, now we want some land, or we want some interest in some businesses, or we want something over here. So the Fed is getting assets, real hard assets, for something they created out of thin air. If that makes sense. I'm trying to be simplistic. I hope you're following along. So with that, they took that. They got stuff for the lowest price they could, because they just created, hasn't been any flow for the dollars, that kind of stuff. No one's really touched it. It's just been created, so it's got the highest value, those dollars, at that time. As it goes through the system, the bank starts loaning it out, and then companies and other businesses, the people see, well, there's a ton more out here. Because there's a ton more out here, it's going to cost X amount for us to stay in business, to buy the items we need and the stuff that we need to survive or keep business going. So because it's going to cost us more, because there's more currency out there, in return we have to charge more for our goods and services. That's how it happens. And the further down the road you go, the higher prices become. But the people that create it get the best deal because they get something for nothing. Really, they create it out of thin air. In return, after a few swaps, few trades, whatever they are the ones that end up with the assets, whether it's the land or the interest in the company or just holding T-bills. That's the Fed gets the top, banks, politicians, people in charge, give them the best and get the best from doing really nothing, not a thing. And in return, the dollars you and I hold start to become worth less and less and less until they are worthless. There's nothing to them at all. Just like Argentina, Zimbabwe, Venezuela. So what happens, you're holding this currency, this fiat currency, you're holding these dollars, and it starts to hyperinflate, or inflation's rampant. And people are starting to not want to accept it anymore, like happened in those countries I talked about. So you want to go buy $20 worth of groceries. What used to be $20 worth of groceries might end up costing thousands or even tens of thousands in fiat currency. But there comes a time when they're not going to accept the fiat currency anymore, because it changes, by the day or the minute, the hour. It's constantly changing, so they're no longer wanting to accept that. They're like, we need to accept assets. We need something real. Whether that means a different currency, different fiat currency out there. Like that's what happened in Venezuela, and that's what happened in Zimbabwe. They stopped accepting the Zimbabwe dollar at all. No matter how much you would give them, they stopped accepting it. And they wanted American dollars, because that had a better standing and that was more stable, or other dollars from different countries, or they would accept silver, gold, that kind of stuff. It's an extreme circumstance, I understand, at least from the perspective of Americans, because it hasn't really happened here, not of recent. But my feeling is it's coming, so just be prepared. And maybe there's a way. As soon as you get some of that fiat currency, maybe you want to think about, what do I need to do? I need to get into some asset that's going to hold value. It's something to think about. I know. So I hope you got the fiat feel from it with my Monopoly example and Monopoly money. I don't know how to stress that anymore. It might be confusing when you introduced a whole bunch more, like I said, 3 games worth of during one game of the available bills there, and how everything else went up in value or price because of that, down in value, the dollars were. But I think the idea of that the Federal Reserve note, the dollars, the digits you and I get from our employers, you and I use for exchange, for goods and services, that kind of stuff, is not ours. It's not yours. It's not mine. You are using it. You are borrowing it. You're able to use it for commerce. Like if you went to your friend's house, relative's house to play a game of Monopoly, those dollars you get for that game are not yours. You are using them for that game, just like you're using the Federal Reserve note for surviving and getting around in this thing called life, and using what they're saying you need to use. Well, when nothing backs it, it's not backed by anything, it's going to break, it's going to go away, and it's going to hyperinflate and become worthless. It's happened many times all over the world, and right now what they're doing is nothing new. It's just what happens before there's a huge inflation crash and complete devaluation of the fiat currency that they force us, you and I, to use. So anyways, I just wanted to get that out there. I hope that makes some sense. Always, protect yourself and think of the best things for you and your family. Thank you for watching. Stay vigilant and protect your family, protect yourself, and protect your wealth.